You have to start at the beginning. And I know it can be boring, like you were saying with the numbers and finances and stuff like that, but those are things people have to do in order to move forward. Because if those processes and procedures fail, that business is not sustainable.
That's true. And, in my world, I see that, just from the financial strategy side that you're kind of alluding to on part of that, yes, the business plan, but also there's kind of a financial half to that, is people that don't put those things into place. That's really where about 40% of small businesses end up, going under and liquidating, is because they've not done those things in the very beginning. And 90% of entrepreneurs, don't succeed. And so, we're sort of crazy for being entrepreneurs, but at the same time, it's highly rewarding. And, why would we want to, kind of like, stack the deck against ourselves by not doing the initial steps? So I'm glad that you brought that up, because that is a very important thing. And that's sort of, kind of going back to the question of, our strategy is important. That's part of that strategy is, just make sure that you do that stuff. You may not want to, it may cost a little bit of money, but if you don't do it, it's going to cost a whole lot more later. So it's kind of
exactly.
Like we said in the Army, suck it up, buttercup, because it's going to be a lot more painful later.
Yep.
So as far as for a budding entrepreneur, we all look for resources and, support out there to kind of help us in business. What would be some of those support resources that you found that you would recommend that people kind of take advantage of?
I think for budding entrepreneurs, use all the free resources that you have at your hand beginning. I have found that SCORE is a huge resource for me. The Small Business Administration. Sure. I would look online for libraries. You never know what kind of courses or free things they may have for entrepreneurs starting out. So a library could be a really great resource. You can go online a lot of the times. I think even doing a search for free resources for entrepreneurs into Google, just at first to get an idea of where you want to go, and use the resources at hand. For me, I still like Excel and Microsoft. I'm a Microsoft girl. I've been using it for over 20 years. So why, if you know how to use a system, but everyone else that you know in 2018 is using a different system and you have to reteach yourself, why would you do that when it's still compatible to use the resources at your hand?
Sure.
So I think using your resources at hand and going to do a search on the Small Business Administration is a great place to start. Secretary of State actually is a good place to start. Sometimes they have a lot of things. IRS.gov actually has a lot of great free information for those starting out to get an idea of what they're looking at. So I'd start there.
Yeah, and you mentioned several really good ones. I found also within the local cities, if you're in a larger metroplex, then there's going to be the economic development departments in your cities. Those are also a good resource that you can reach out to, because that's kind of your city's department for bringing in new business. And so, they're there to make sure that there's more businesses in town. And so, they kind of are committed to your success. And also chambers of commerce are a huge one, because that's a whole bunch of business owners getting together. So, chambers are a good resource for people.
Absolutely.
So we're kind of in an interesting time in history where people are starting to incorporate their values more in their business. Used to, it was sort of a what you believed and thought you kept separate from your business, and the two, never the twain shall meet, so to speak. But we're sort of in a place where now people are incorporating their belief structure and their values into business. Is that something that you do? And if so, how would you incorporate or advise people to incorporate that into theirs?
Wow, you're so right. The way business is being done these days is different, and that is definitely one of them. I think for me, with my service business, it was such an easy transition because the military just happened to fit in with my character anyway. Mm-hmm. So definitely, integrity has always been huge for me. So that was an easy transition. I think for me now, getting into different industries, I still have integrity and that sort of thing, but I always was taught in business, you don't curse, you don't be to me, that's unprofessional, right?
Right.
That's my personal choice. Now, when I'm shooting when I'm just chilling with veterans and we're just talking and hanging out and everything like that, I think there's a time and a place. I know that's a big one. That's why I'm hitting on that one. I think there's a time and a place for certain words and things to take place. But I still think you don't have to compromise your values. Oh, that's a tough one because professionalism is so huge because of perception.
Right.
And I can still stay true to myself and still give a true perception of who I am, maintaining my professionalism. I think that's the most important thing at the end of the day for me is my professionalism and how did I handle myself? Did I get excited? Did I react? Did I respond? Mm-hmm. And maybe that would be me in a street fight, right? If I had to, but it wouldn't be the same way I did business.
Sure. Yeah. And I like how you put that because, it is something, when we're on the job, so to speak, where we really can't divide off that part of ourselves. I find that, those personal elements should be part of business because it's something that really kind of adds flavor and interest to what you're doing and differentiates yourself, from everybody else.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, I can admire different business styles as well. I'm like, oh yeah, that is so awesome, and it's easy for me to realize that some consumers may not be able to differentiate between that. And that's a big deal for me personally. That's a good question.
So if there was something earlier in life that you wish you had have done and didn't, what would that be?
Think before I act.
That's a good one. Why do you say that?
In my 20s, I guess maybe, and in the military, 20s, single, in the military, I just had a good time. I was of age to drink and go party. I still got my job done. I just think that I made some irresponsible choices or decisions along the way that I think if I would have made differently, that's all. Nothing too bad. I just think before you act, and I wish I would have used the resources at my disposal, and I didn't. Yeah. In my 20s, I don't think I had the capacity to, who cares what it's going to be like at 40,
Yeah, and now that I'm there, I'm just like, oh my.
I know. Yes.
So I'd like to kind of focus on you, Jaime, for a minute, kind of from a personal direction, maybe a little less business, a little more personal, if that's okay.
Sure.
So since you are a veteran, this is something that a lot of us kind of go through, especially when we're transitioning out of the military, and then we decide that we want to maybe do entrepreneurship. What hurdles did you personally have to face, and how did you overcome those?
Oh man, that's a good one. I think I was so used to the high ops tempo. Mm-hmm. And being responsible, as you know, a military person is responsible for 20 things. In the civilian world, they break that up into 20 positions.
Sure.
So our minds are always going. We are trained to always be able to multitask, do this, do that. You know what's going on there. You know what's going on behind you. The pace was completely different in the civilian world. And I had all these ideas and not the same resources I had in the military. Mm-hmm. And I think my biggest hurdle was trying to focus and be like, okay, Jaime, this is different. It's a different culture. They do business differently here. And even though entrepreneurs, I think, are still do things different, I had to really hone my skills and hone my mind and really adapt to the way things were done in the civilian sector.
Sure. Yeah, and I think a lot of us, kind of deal with that. The two worlds are so different, and we have to be able to take off the one hat and put on the other hat, and especially when I transitioned out, there wasn't we didn't have TAPS back early 90s when I got out, and so we didn't have that transition assistance program, and so that was part of it. Just coming back to the world, and it was different. Everything was still the same. Same people were back in the hometown. Everyone kind of was doing the same old thing, but I was different, and I didn't know how to deal with that. So that was kind of my transition struggle.
I can appreciate that.
So when you were kind of coming upon those things, was it kind of obvious the answer to those, or did you kind of stumble upon how to deal with that?
Wow, that's a great question. Well, because I didn't have those resources, I had to turn myself into a resource. And thankfully, internet and Google made it easier to I was raised to just look it up. You don't know the answer, go look it up. So that's what I started doing. I didn't kind of realize it. I knew I was lost, but I didn't really know what to look for. So I just started thinking and looking, observing, reading. I just started doing a lot of research and reading, actually, and reaching out to resources, finding them.
Oh, man, that's pretty good. So when you were starting your business, how did you get started with that? Maybe talk me through how you decided to go the direction you did.
In the cannabis or service?
Let's speak on cannabis, for example, since
okay.
That's kind of your thing now.
Yeah, cool. I'd love to. So my son got a little sicker last year, and when I found out that he had the onset of liver disease, I was like, oh my gosh, life's too short. What am I doing? Finally, I just decided in December, I'm like, no fear this year. 2018, no fear this year. I'm doing it. I've been a cannabis consumer for 10 years, so I'm kind of familiar with what it can do for the body. And I blocked it out and even hid from it. And I didn't want to admit it, not to my son's doctors, not to my doctors, not to anybody, because of the stigma. So I was afraid. So I took their advice. I did it the FDA way, and my son's got liver disease because the drugs that they give him for cystic fibrosis cause liver fibrosis and cause damage. And I don't understand that. So I was like, look, he needs better. I can do better. I just kind of decided to take it into my own hands, because I know what cannabis can do, and I know how our bodies respond. So I decided, no fear. I'm just gonna tell people that I consume cannabis, and I just did it.
Yeah, and I'm sort of a philosophy that God's medicine is out there in nature, and especially you're mentioning doctors prescribe this, that, and the other, and I'm not gonna get on my soapbox about that one, because it seems like that's a little bit too too commercialized, because it seems that a lot of things are prescribed that maybe don't need to be. But I'll try to not get too political on that one. But people should take responsibility for themselves, and they really should. Yes, you can be given one opinion, but ultimately we're in charge of ourselves. We're in charge of our own bodies, and what do we do to take care of it? So there's always going to be two answers to every question, and which answer is right for you.
Oh, I totally agree.
So I do like to hear that you're talking about being empowered and taking responsibility for your son's health and going in a direction, and for your own health to find that correct answer. because a lot of people are afraid to do that. And